Whoa, let's learn stuff. Let's learn about distribution strategy. Moving on to the next topic, then, number 6, the 4 P's of marketing. So, at this point, getting through the first 10 chapters of the textbook, you should have encountered that whole idea of the 4 P's of marketing, or you might have seen it as marketing mix. So, the marketing mix, or 4 P's of marketing, it stands for, well, 4 different words that start with the letter P. So, there's product and price. It's like that whole concept of what is a product. And one of the items we talked about there was about what we could think of it as an offering, right? It's not just the actual product or service that we sell to our customers. There's actually a whole bunch of ideas that go behind what the product is. Like, there's the augmented product, actual product, and things like that. So the other 2 P's are place. So that's going to be what our topic is about today, is place, or the distribution strategy part of that. And then the other P is promotion. So really, your marketing plan paper has been about coming up with the marketing mix for your chosen brand, whether that's your own business or about yourself or where you work or a future business idea, right? Lots of different possibilities. It's been about that, because the first assignment, your first writing assignment, was just setting the foundation, knowing yourself, knowing your internal environment, knowing your external environment, knowing your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Because the idea there is, if you know yourself or your brand, then you're going to theoretically have a pretty good idea of what strategies would make sense. So then that's what your next writing assignment was about, right? You wrote marketing objectives, and then you identified your target market, because, well, what's, your product. Like, I know for a lot of students, they like to say, oh, my product is for everybody. But practically speaking, that's not, unless you're like a really huge company, right? Like Google or whatever, that's not going to be practical for your brand. You have to target your efforts. So that's what your target market's about. And then now your next part of your paper was about writing about your product and your pricing strategies. And then now, place or distribution strategies. That's what assignment 7 is about, or at least one of those parts anyway, because the other part is promotional strategies. So yeah, going back to what I started to say, that's what your marketing plan has been about, is what is it about these 4 different parts of the marketing mix. What kind of different strategies are you going to employ to meet the objectives that you identified? So that's kind of how it works. And so now we're going to jump into chapter 11. So at this point, right, we've determined, okay, you have a product and then you have an idea of how to price it. Well, now we got to get your product to the market. It has to get to your customers somehow. It doesn't matter if you have an amazing product. If your customers can't get to it, then it really doesn't do anybody any good. And so the first topic you'll run into with this whole place part of the 4 P's of marketing is a definition of the distribution channel. And I just put it on there straight from the textbook, or inspired by the textbook definition. So it's a network of entities through which a product moves from the producer, or you might know them as manufacturer also, depending on the textbook, or it might even call them manufacturers in our textbook, but they're the ones who create these products or services, and then it gets to the consumer somehow. So for those of you in logistics and supply chain management, that's probably your love language, right? Like, this is your kind of thing you want to learn about. So if you think about it, there's a lot of different mixes, if you will, of how that could work. Like, it could be a direct connection to your customers. Let's see. Let me jump here. So at a minimum, a distribution channel would consist of the producer and the customer. So that would be when they're working directly or connected directly. But then there's also the indirect channel. So there's Sometimes we have a network of producers, wholesalers, and retailers working together to connect the producer to the customer. And so there are a lot of benefits to this indirect channel. For one thing, it saves producers from handling millions of transactions. So imagine a big company like Pepsi, for example, with all their different products. Just imagine if they had to sell directly to their customers. That would be millions of transactions selling their different Pepsi products. And then for the customer side, imagine, just the things that you buy at a grocery store. Imagine if you had to buy your milk from a dairy farmer, and then you buy your bread from somebody else, and then you buy your tomatoes somewhere else. So like that would also be a lot of transactions for the customers. And so the wholesalers, retailers, and yeah, wholesalers and retailers, they could be the in between to where it helps us with that. And this graphic, I took this from our textbook. So here's a scenario where we have these 5 different brands or producers. So one produces shampoo, another one does batteries, and then we have just 5 customers in this case. Well, Pantene would have to sell to Shanice, Tom, Megan, Will, Carlos, and then Shanice, if she wants to buy batteries or shampoo or tissues or whatever, she would have to go to each one. So that was the scenario I just talked about a few minutes ago, a couple minutes ago, about having to go to different places to get what we want. So there's a lot of transactions going on there. But in this model where we have somebody in the middle, some kind of wholesaler or retailer, in this case, Walmart, well, these producers could just take their products to Walmart, and then Walmart could sell for them, and then customers could just go to Walmart or whatever, some kind of retailer, and get their products from there. So that's really the whole basic idea behind the distribution channel. Oh, and I should mention this too. Just like the other stuff I've talked about, other chapters in our Zoom sessions, uh, I just want to mention this, that I didn't take every single item that was in the textbook, and so even what I'm talking about here wouldn't be a substitute to actually reading the textbook, because there are a lot more items on there that I'm not going to cover. Okay, so let me jump to this next topic then about internet distribution. So, well, I was trying to remember why did I even put that on there. I could have just left it all for you all to read, but here's the thing. So with internet distribution, yeah, the 2 different kinds of or the benefits from that. So it allows for knowledge management. So imagine, without the internet, how would a producer and the retailers and wholesalers, well, how would they have to work together? Well, I guess it's still possible, right? Because there was a time when we had that distribution channel, even without the internet. But anymore these days, it makes it really easy for them to have to cooperate and really use that knowledge to be really efficient in what they do, right? So imagine just how it works with Walmart, for example, like um, how their agreements with their retailers has made them really efficient to where, yeah, they could really pass on the cost savings to their customers by being so efficient. But then there's also a dark side to it. There could be a problem with internet distribution being so easy, and one of them is about copyright infringement. So defining that, it could be unauthorized use of intellectual property. So anything digital out there, it's pretty easy to use that and maybe not have permission to do that. Then it's also failure to properly credit sources, or just outright plagiarism where you just copy it and pass it off as your own. And so one of the reasons I thought about that is, from week 1 or week 2, and from all the different communications I had in you all getting started with writing your paper, I talked about the importance of citing your sources and giving credit where your ideas come from. And so, yeah, I just wanted to bring home the point here that, yeah, that's another area there, right? Like, it is a big deal as you're writing your paper, to be mindful of the ideas that you're using, whether it's from a book or an article or whatever, or even from your from interviewing people. So it's about giving credit where credit is due. And I even mentioned this in one of my earlier videos that in academic writing, you really show the strength of your paper by having a whole list of different references that you use. That's just kind of how it works. It makes it more credible, more reputable when you show that, yeah, all my ideas are backed up by all these other experts who talked about that item. So anyway, that's my plug about, another reminder about why I have that in-text citations and references requirement in your paper. So that's another thing to keep in mind as you're working on your assignment 8, is to really hone in on ensuring that you have your in-text citations and references. And that's going to be, theoretically, that should be covered already anyway, because that would be one of my feedback that I should have given to you in your assignment 4, 5, 6, and 7, if it's still a thing that needs to be addressed in your work. Okay, yeah. So this kind of goes along with what I just said a few minutes ago. The textbook has a lot more information than what I'm covering here. These are just the highlights, the things to just kind of scratch at the surface of what distribution strategies is, or what this place component of the marketing mix entails. So yeah, the textbook gets into intermediary. So there's 2 or 3 pages on that. So make sure you take a look at that, because your picture of what makes up distribution strategies would be incomplete if you don't have that information